Hi, I am so glad you are back with us again for week 2 of this journey as we read through the Bible together. What we're going to do this week is we're going to pick up the story of Jacob. Now, if you weren't with us last week, let me just give you a little background, bring you up to speed. Last week we talked about Genesis 1, and it's this wonderful story of creation and how God created the heavens and the earth and how we're created in His image. And it's this wonderful, great piece for us to use to think about how we have a place in this universe. And what happens in Genesis is the first 11 stories are basically first 11 chapters are basically the stories of the world, the stories of God creating everything, the stories of Noah and the ark, the stories of the Tower of Babel, all those things. And then in Genesis 12, it narrows down to one family. And you get the stories of God calling Abraham out of Ur, which was this Babylonian city, and his descendants working all the way down to Joseph being there in Egypt and saving the people from famine. It's great stories. And one of the many reasons that we're still reading this stuff 4,000 years after it was written is because it speaks to us as human beings. Human nature has not changed. If you took somebody from the ancient Near East, from the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph, and you put them here in Wisconsin in the year 2021, after they get over the language and the technology, they'd fit in because they're a human being. And human nature doesn't change. And these stories of Abraham and his descendants give us such an insight into human beings and how God works with us in spite of and through our human nature. So what I want to do today is I want to look at Genesis 27 and a little bit out of 28. And it gives us the story of Jacob. And the story of Jacob takes out a big chunk of the book of Genesis. He is a wily trickster. He has always got a piece of something he's trying to work. He is the kind of guy that you do not leave your wallet unattended around because he just got something going, which makes it all the more interesting that God chooses him for something great. So let's pick up the story in Genesis 27. What's happened is Isaac is Jacob's father, and Isaac is getting old, and he's going to die. And Isaac has 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau is the big burly guy who likes to go out and hunt and bring back all the game food. Jacob is much shiftier, much more thoughtful, and always working to be the trickster. And they're twins. And so Isaac says to Esau, go out, find some good food, bring me back something good for dinner, and then I'll give you a blessing. Because I got a blessing, and I'm going to die, and I want you to have it. Now, Rebekah is Isaac's wife and Jacob and Esau's mother. And we all know you're not supposed to do this, but she's got a favorite. And a hint, it's not Esau. She loves Jacob way more than Esau. So, what happens is she says to Jacob, Esau's out hunting, get one of the goats out of the flock, we'll slaughter it, put the skin over your arm so you're hairy like your brother, because your dad can't see anymore, and then we'll give him the goat stew and we'll tell him you're Esau, and then you get the blessing. So that's what he does. And so he tricks his father into getting the blessing. And his father blesses him and gives them this blessing. He says, may God give you the heaven's dew and of earth's riches, and the abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you when people bow down to lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and may those who bless you be blessed. So, after Isaac finishes this, Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, and Esau comes in. Now, this makes it interesting, doesn't it? He too prepared some tasty food and brought it for his father. And so he said to him, my father, sit up and eat some of my game that you may give me your blessing. And Isaac said, who are you? And he says, I am your son, your firstborn, Esau. And Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. And he says, your brother came in deceitfully and took your blessing. And now what's interesting is Isaac says he doesn't have any more blessings to give. And so what he gives Esau is this. Your dwelling will be away from the earth's riches and away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke off of your neck. Isaac is working out of this idea that only one can be in charge, and only one can have the ruling, and only one can have this. And so it doesn't actually set it up. This strife between them has been going on literally since they were born. They came out of the womb with Jacob grasping the heel of Esau. And one day when they were younger, Esau had been hungry because he couldn't find anything to hunt. And he sold his birthright, his inheritance, for a mess of pottage, a bit of stew. He has thrown it all away because he was hungry. And here he has lost it again through Jacob's trickery, through Isaac saying, this is all I got. Now what's fascinating is this is a person God's going to choose. God is working through this dysfunctional, this destructive, this family with a truckload of issues. And God is still saying, I'm using them. I'm caring about them. Should give us all hope. Now, this is the part I really want to pick up on here. In chapter 28, verse 10, Jacob is on the run. He is afraid, quite rightfully, I think he's correct in this assessment, that if he doesn't get the heck out of Dodge, his brother's going to kill him. He's stolen something important from his brother. His brother wants him dead. So he runs away. I would recommend this choice. I think he made the right decision. Sometimes you might be able to hug it out, but not in this occasion. Now, so let's pick up in verse 10. Jacob left Beersheba and he was set out for Haran. This is up north. This is towards Babylon. This is where his relatives are. And when he reached a certain place, he stopped there for a night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream where he saw a stairway resting on earth with the top reaching heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And there above it stood the Lord. And he said, and God said, I am the Lord, God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I give you and your descendants the land which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east and the north and the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and through your offspring. And I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. And I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Now, something to think about. God is making this choice for this family. And he's saying, look, I am the God of Abraham and Isaac, and I'm the God of you, and I am promising you these things. Has Jacob done anything to deserve this? No. Nope. He has lied, and he has cheated, and he has stolen. He is not the guy you want. But God sees something in them. God sees something in this dysfunctional family. God cares about him. And God says, I'm going to use you for something. And this line here is key. I give you and your descendants the land in which you're lying. This is laying out for the future kingdom of Israel. This family is going to go into Egypt, have a ton of descendants, and come back a couple of centuries later. And when they come back, God is saying, yep, this part I had marked out, this part I would given for Abraham, I'm giving it to you. And then this line right here, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and through your offspring. You see, one of the recurring promises of the Old Testament is all the earth is going to be blessed because of the Jewish people. And yes, we can look at that as they're going to be, the rest of the world is going to be blessed through Jesus. But it's even bigger than that. They are called to be a light shining in the darkness. They are called to be a people of God. They are called to be a people who share this message, this hope with the people around them. Comfort for the stranger, for a place for widows and orphans, to find sustenance. And it's important to remember that right from the beginning. We're only, 93 pages into this particular Bible. But as a reminder that we are not here for ourselves. We are here to bless others as we have been blessed. Now, verse 16, when Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place and I was not aware of it. And he was afraid. This natural reaction, God's here. Sometimes we tame God. We think of him as just this person who gives us good stuff. One of the things I love about reading the Old Testament is this reminder that this is the God who created the universe. This is the God who's judge of all. And he's terrified. I love that. Because what happens when the angels show up? Whenever an angel shows up, the first thing they always say is, don't be afraid. Well, there's a reason people are afraid. And Jacob says, how awesome is this place? There is none other than the house. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So he builds an altar there, and he calls that place Bethel. The city, through the city, used to be called Luz. Now, he builds that place, and anytime, a little bit on Hebrew here, anytime you see that L at the end, E-L, it's God. And anytime you see Beth, it's the house of. So Bethlehem is the house of bread. And I'm blanking on some other places that end in L, but there's plenty of them. Of course, I should have thought of this a minute ago. My own name, Michael. Hebrew means who is like God. It's a question. Not saying I'm like God, because you all know I'm not. But whenever you see that L or that Beth, that's what is going on there. So you didn't know you were going to get a Hebrew lesson with us today. So the story goes on with Jacob. This is just a snippet of it. And I have spent weeks preaching on the life of the patriarchs, if not months, because there's so much to mine out of this. And that's the parts I want to focus on today. But I'm going to suggest to you, take some time and just read through the life of Jacob. Take a couple of nights and just read through a couple of chapters. It's such a fun, crazy story. I am surprised it doesn't get mined more for movies and dramas, because there is so much humanity to it, so much realism, so much just speaking to our core, because we recognize ourselves in this trickster that you'd think would be beyond redemption, but that God somehow uses. So take some time, talk to your group, just check in, see how everybody's doing, and then we will be back with some questions. All right, so I have a series of questions here for you, and these are for you to discuss with your group. If you're just doing this on your own, you could use it as just devotional questions. And I have more questions than you're going to get through in group time, but that's okay. So let's go back to this blessing to begin with. And my first question is, why do you think this blessing from Isaac to Jacob was so powerful, even though Isaac thought it was for somebody else? All right, next question. Let's talk about family dynamics here. Who do you think was most at fault and why? You've got Isaac, who wasn't quite paying attention. You got Esau, who had already sold off his inheritance before and still wanted the blessing. You've got Jacob, who goes along with this plan. You've got Rebekah, who hatches the plan and should have known better. Who do you blame most in this? If you're going to make a little pie chart, what do you think? All right, the covenant that God has with Abraham and his descendants owes very little to human effort and almost everything to God's undeserved grace. Why do you think that is? What do you think God is trying to do with that? Whose blessing matters most in your life? Your parents, your spouse, somebody at work? Who? Why does that matter so much to you? Have you ever experienced a disappointment like Esau, where you think you got something all wound up, where you think you've earned this or you think you deserve this, and it just gets jerked away when you least expect it? Have you ever been fleeing from justice and had God find you in that moment? Sometimes we run away from earthly justice, and in that moment, God reaches out to us. Has it ever happened? Ever happened, especially when you don't deserve it? Why do you think God speaks so powerfully to Jacob when he does not deserve it? Jacob makes this vow in verse 20, 21, 22. It makes these promises to God. What do you think's at the heart of it? Is he honestly repentant? Is he trying to figure things out? Is he doing something to earn favor with God? What do you think's going on there? If you don't know, feel free to speculate. This is one where you can do that. Here's a fun question. Have you ever made that same kind of vow like Jacob did, where God does something really nice for you that you don't expect, don't deserve, and you make some response like that? Tell that story to the people around you if you can. And last question. Do you think God still speaks in dreams? Why or why not? Well, thank you again for being part of this discussion. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope this has been a blessing for you. We will pick this up again next week. If you did not see last week's, we will have that in the end, and we'll link to the whole playlist of these so you can see them all. And we hope this continues to draw you close to God above. Amen.